Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Grain. And today, I think we're gonna focus on the subject of Black financial empowerment and freedom. So I think over the past year, one of the things we've seen is there's been a lot of talk about just Black issues in general. So we had a lot of the protests that were going on during the year after the George Floyd shooting, and just a lot of the sort of upheaval that we had in 2020. And so I think one of the things we're going to talk about today is, how exactly do we go about solving many of these issues in the Black community? And I know my position is that I think that a lot of things, the issues that we're seeing in the Black community, are more like symptoms of underlying, bigger underlying issues and diseases that I think are really that we have to resolve. And I think most of those really stem from, a lack of finances in the community, and also just a lack of business ownership, and a lack of sort of a system, within the community, so that so we can be more self-reliant. Um, so I think so that's sort of a general overview. But then what we're going to do is we're going to go through just specific issues that are plaguing the Black community right now. We can talk about how solving the issue of financial independence, how solving that issue would also solve the issues that we're going to discuss. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I think that I want us to kind of jump into this. Um, I guess my first question would be, do you feel as though us as Black people, as African Americans, do we want financial empowerment? Do we want to be free from like financial issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it depends. I mean, if you listen to what people are saying, they're saying that they want to solve these issues in the community, and we want to have I guess equality in the country and all this other stuff. Then, if that's the case, then inherently they would want financial freedom. So I think that's what we're getting at. Is that for me? I'm a big person who believes in. I'm big on like problem solving. I'm not big on talking about the issues and just complaining. I'm big on like, hey, what are the actual tangible solutions we can come up with to solve them? So if you're one of those people that don't want to just complain about Black issues, you want to actually come up with a solution, then I think you would be on board with Black financial empowerment. So, but we'll see. But I think first we'll go ahead and go through the list some of these issues, and I think we'll start with Black unemployment. That's something that's relatively obviously connected to Black finances. Um, so I think one of the things is that we saw this happen during the pandemic, but then also during the 2008 economic crisis, is that it's almost like when America catches a cold, Black people we get pneumonia. That's sort of the old saying, and we've seen that again with the unemployment rate, where I think Black unemployment was almost twice as large as white unemployment during the economic the Great Recession from 2008, but then also during when the pandemic hit last year. So it was we were just hit much harder, and had a much more difficult time getting jobs compared to white people and other races. And I think where it goes back to is that we just don't have that economic base, that system in place within the community to where we can rely on ourselves for a job. So it's like, if you're Black, then more than likely, almost whatever job you're looking for is going to be a company that's owned or ran by non-Black people and generally white people. And if we're going to take the position that we live in a country that has historically been very racist and very oppressive to Black people, then us being reliant on going to those same oppressors for our jobs, and being dependent on them for our livelihood, that leaves us in a very vulnerable state. And I think that's why, when times are tough, who are going to be the first people who are going to suffer is going to be Black people. It's almost like your own house. If you're at home, if times are hard, well, you're going to make sure that your wife and your kids are eating first before you start worrying about outside folks. And so it's kind of the same thing with different races. It's like if you're white and you have your own business, well, if I got to let people go, more than likely I'm going to let the people who maybe not are not part like really like me or part of my family. I'm going to have less sympathy towards helping them out than I would be the people who are closer to me. And that's why I think you see the Black unemployment rate take such a huge hit during tough times. So if we can build our own businesses and build our own financial systems, then when there are tough times, we can do things like making sure we keep our Black employees on board even during the tough times, or we have places to go when the white businesses are laying people off. We have options. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with everything you're saying. I think that my concerns kind of fall closer to the discussion on the education gap,
Mm.
because everything that you said is, I agree with, and I don't think I have anything further to add on the fact that it's just there are a lot of us that rely on jobs that we didn't create,
Right.
And we're also limited because we might not have the education to either create our own business or have a business where we're not susceptible to. I'm thinking about COVID, so susceptible to being having getting oh fuck.
No. No, I get.
But also due to the pandemic, I think that a lot of people have to work. And so they have essential jobs that could lead themselves to be more susceptible to getting the virus. And I think of right now, a lot of people are trying to create their own business. And due to what happened to George Floyd and others last year and in the past, I think that a lot of mainstream businesses are trying to get behind supporting Black-owned businesses,
Right.
which I hate that term, but
Why do you hate that term?
It's becoming more of a like cliche term, like a BOB, black on, like slapping black on everything. Do you see other cultures doing that? Because it makes it seem as though it is not the norm.
Right.
You know, when folks use terms like black-owned business or black girl magic, is I understand the I guess intention to empower, but it also has an underlying current of oh wow, I can't believe you did this.
Right.
Like this can't be normal. Like it has to be only black. Right. Or I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like it's sort of an oddity. It's like, oh, black people have this is a black business. Wow. So you kind of put into someone's head that what they're doing is outside the norm, whereas what we want to do is normalize it to where it's not something that's some weird thing. But I also have a different issue with that, which is that to me, it's great. It's good that a Target and some of these companies are trying to promote black-owned business, but I'm always kind of leery when you have large white corporations kind of getting involved with black-owned businesses because again, at the end of the day, you got to follow the money. So whoever is providing you money or resources in any kind of way, they have a certain level, still have a certain level of control over how you're doing things. And so, like, if you have black-owned businesses that are starting to have to rely on Amazon or rely on a Target or something like that for marketing or for money or whatever, then that kind of allows those businesses to have say in how these black businesses sort of run their business. Because otherwise, we'll take that marketing away from you. And I think that goes back to having control over the black community, even if it's indirectly. So I think we got to be careful about even getting those, getting that assistance from those white corporations because it still kind of gives them some control. But yeah, I totally agree. But all right, so you mentioned the education gap, so we'll talk about that, which I think is kind of once again kind of goes hand in hand. But there's a lot of talk in the country about how black people, black children are behind, when it comes to like academic performance in a lot of cases. And for me, I feel like there's a few reasons for that. I think one is it goes back to the family. That's a big thing. I think a lot of times we have a lot of broken homes where you only have a single parent in the household. You don't have those two parents there to sort of raise the kid and provide sort of a supplemental education in addition to what the schools are providing, or also have parents there to kind of like stay on top of their kids to make sure that they're doing well in school. So I think right off the bat, if you can kind of solve that family dynamic and get that issue straightened out, then I think kids will do a lot better in school.
I totally agree with that. I also just want to ask, do black people in America value education? Is that something that we as our culture care about for ourselves, for our children? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of people who do. I know I care about it. And I think the question is kind of like I was saying before is, do you care about solving these issues or not? Because you're right. Psychologically, I think we have people who still have a sort of a slave mindset, right? Because a lot of this stuff kind of goes back to slavery. It goes back, to just to a lot of the oppression Black people have dealt with in this country. Where, if you're Black and you're growing up, your mindset might be that, education is not really that important, or I don't really need it, or it's not cool, or whatever. And a lot of that's sold to us through the media, through the way, whether it's through the way entertainment is marketed to Black people, where, it's not really cool to be, the smart kid. I mean, think about the smart, kids we've seen on Black kids we've seen on television is Steve Urkel. That's kind of like the image that you see. You don't really, it's not like it's seen some great thing to be a super intelligent Black man. That's not really, what's encouraged. So that's an issue.
Right, but it is cool once you get older, once you have that job, and once you have money, because typically that's what your education affords you. I feel like a lot of our young Black men and Black women are very intelligent, and I think that it probably is more on the side for Black men than it is for Black women for it to be not cool to be smart.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that Black women in general, and Black women are encouraged to go to school, to learn, to better themselves. Black men in general, I don't think that is really encouraged by mainstream America, by us as the Black community. And I think that really hurts us. And I think that really hurts us when it comes to financial freedom. If you're not educated on how to take care of your money and how to take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to save money. You're not going to be able to learn how to open up and hold a bank account. You're not going to be able to know how to even hold down a job.
That's right.
If you don't have that education piece. And I think it's up to us as Black people who are educated to teach one another and encourage one another to learn. Not necessarily. I think when we talk about education and we talk about learning, we think about school, we think about like going to college. It's not necessarily always about that. It's about seeking information however best you can. And we as a community are not taught how to seek and learn and obtain and use and apply that information to our lives.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I feel like a lot of that, as far as how the media portrays it, that's by design. Because I feel like the strength of any community, honestly, you can look at it based on how the men are in the community. So I think if your men in the community are strong, typically your community is going to be stronger because they're the ones who are kind of in charge of protecting and leading that community. And I feel like it's all interconnected, right? So I think when we talk about the fact that Black boys lag behind in education compared to just Black women, I think that kind of plays itself out in issues with relationships later on. I think one of the things we're seeing now with why Black men and Black women are having a harder time with marriage and relationships is because a lot of the Black women who've gone on to get a lot of education, who are very intelligent, who are making good money, they still have a desire to be with a man that they feel is either on that same educational level, financial level, or above. And because we haven't invested enough in trying to raise up the Black boys, they're having a harder time being at that level that the Black women want and can respect. And now you have a situation where you have more broken homes because you don't have that together, and that leads to poor raising of the children, which leads to that education gap. So I think it's all interconnected. But I guess going back to the whole idea of like financial empowerment, how that affects the education gap, I think it kind of goes back to if we can get Black teachers in Black schools to teach Black children, then I think you're going to have a situation where we can provide a better quality education to Black kids. And let me explain what I mean by that, because I know what I think I know where you're going to go with it. Right now, you're saying, well, a lot of the inner city communities are taught by Black teachers or whatever, but those aren't schools that are funded by Black people. Those aren't schools that are owned and ran by Black people. They're taught by Black people. You may have a Black principal, but they're still relying off of government resources and government funding. So what I'm talking about is more along the lines of if you have sort of a Black charter school to where you can set the curriculum yourself, you can focus on teaching real Black history. You don't have the restraints that a lot of the public schools have. Let you go ahead and say something.
And I feel like a lot of what we're talking about can go into a rabbit hole of a whole nother subject. So, and maybe that's the problem is that so many of the issues within our community is so intersecting and interrelated that you can't really fix one problem without looking at other
But I think
problems
a
in
lot of
our
this is just related to the
community.
finances.
Um, and so the point that the reason why I said that was because my question is, do we want to do
Well, I'm
that?
talking to the people who want to do it. And the folks who don't want to do nothing, y'all just hang out and don't even just turn the channel, go something else. But for the folks, I'm talking to people who actually want to, change things and want to solve the problem. Because the folks who don't want to solve the problem, you're right. You can tell them. It doesn't matter what you say to them. They're not gonna make a change. So I'm not gonna really care about those folks.
Because I mean, think about it. How many schools like that are out there, and where maybe there's a private school that has been created by an African American person, and it really focuses on teaching the students about history and about um, how to take care of oneself. Where's that school?
Well, that's the problem. We don't have enough of those out there, and the few I have heard about actually do a pretty good job of teaching black students. And so I guess what I'm saying is that if we could take all this money and the financial resources that we have, like whether it's from athletes or black business people and all this other stuff, and pull it together to start and own our own schools, you can now. It's not only about even just teaching black kids, black history and teaching it correctly. It's also like having a school where you can discipline kids in a way that is firm, but then also in a loving way. So where you're not like immediately taking a black kid that's a little more hyper than someone else or whatever and saying, okay, well, there's something wrong with you. We got to get you out of school. It's like, no, how about we redirect that energy in a positive manner? And so I think if you have black teachers and black principals and black people who are running the schools, they're going to be more sympathetic to those kids' needs and trying to actually help them, develop.
And I think other people might combat you stating that, okay, well, you can do that in these regular schools too. You can do that in diverse schools as well by teaching the teachers how to teach, by teaching the teachers how
But
to
who's teaching them?
non-blacks.
Non-blacks are teaching the teachers how to teach black students. That's kind of the problem. Because non-black teachers may not understand the issues that black students are going through, or they may not care as much. That's what I'm saying. That's why I go back to the financial aspect of it. It goes back to who owns the schools. So if you have black people who own the schools, then they can push that kind of curriculum or that kind of teaching style down to the teachers. About how they interact with the black students. And they can tailor it to fit those students' needs. So yeah, so I think if at the end of the day, if we can start running our own schools and having black teachers and black principals and just having schools run by black people, I think we're going to see a lot of that education gap sort of be resolved on its own. So I think the next thing that's a big issue in the black community is gang violence, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of conservatives usually will combat people on. We talk about the racial issue in the country. Is they say, well, yeah, you have police brutality, but you've got a lot of black on black violence, which is true in the black community, and there's a lot of gang violence in the black community. But I think the key is that we kind of think about what the underlying causes of those issues are, and I think when we look at the rise of gangs, a lot of that it goes back to what I was saying before about single, parent households. If you're a black boy who's being raised by his mom and there's no dad in the picture, you're going to look for some level of male guidance from somewhere. And so if you don't really have any, uncles or fathers or grandfathers around to really give you guidance, then you're going to try to find your manhood out in the street. And that's where those gangs, they kind of prey on that. They're saying, okay, you know what? You're looking for guidance. You're looking for a family. We can offer you that. And they get them at a young age where the kids are still very kind of vulnerable and they're, they're
not developed yet.
Right, not fully developed, but they're also very impressionable, so they're easy to get to. But I think that also kind of goes back to to finances. I think at the end of the day, if you have a community that can support itself financially, then the younger people won't feel the need to have to go out and join gangs in order to make money or to be able to take care of themselves, take care of their family. So I think it's kind of a twofold problem of young boys feeling like they need someone to kind of provide them guidance on how to be a man, but then they also want to be able to take care of their moms and kind of step into that role of being the dad. What are your thoughts?
I also think it's a cultural thing. I think that within our culture, we don't value, well, based off of what we see on the media, it doesn't seem like we value morality in a lot of ways. And so I say that because, okay, there's a lot of like being a part of that kind of gang behavior
Mhm.
lifestyle is kind of cool.
Mhm.
And if we change that and
Mhm.
create more of a culture where we are creating our own businesses, we are doing things within the community to help one another, we are creating money and like generational wealth
Mhm.
for ourselves and our family and our
Right.
children, then how does that coolness of the gang lifestyle,
Mhm.
how does that culture
Mhm.
associate and fit in with those
How
goals
does
that
it can't
other
sustain?
cultures have?
Right.
How can you do that? You
Mhm.
can't.
Right.
And so something has to happen within our culture and our mindset about what we perceive to be good on how to change that if we want to create that financial empowerment
Right.
and freedom.
Right. And I think that's a good point. I think by having more black businesses and having black people, really running our own communities, then what happens is that those black businesses are incentivized to clean up the neighborhoods, right? So like if I have a business, and all of a sudden I have if the neighborhood in the area is infested with gang violence or with gangs, that's gonna that's gonna affect my bottom line because people aren't gonna want to come to my establishment, and I'm gonna have a harder time making money because of how violent the area is. So now those black businesses are going to be incentivized to work with the police department, to try to get the area cleaned up and to try to, get that out of the community. And if you can get, the leaders in the community behind cleaning up the community and kind of patrolling our own cities and areas, well, then that's how you can crack down on that gang violence and get it out of your area.
And I think that's a big point that you bring up. Like I said, a lot of these issues that are associated with building financial empowerment in the Black community is interrelated, is intersecting with other issues within the Black culture and the Black community that hold us back. And I think one of those is the Black leadership that are in leadership positions within our cities.
Hmm.
What are they doing to stop the problem?
Hmm.
Look at all of the major cities that
Hmm.
are in our country
Right.
where a lot of this violence occurs.
Hmm.
Who leads those cities?
That's
Who
true.
leads those
Typically, yeah.
areas?
I mean, typically it's Democrats, and a lot of times it's black politicians who are in charge of those communities.
And what are they doing with the money that the city has to empower the youth to deal with violence,
Right.
to deal with poverty? Like, I mean, maybe they're doing a lot, and there's just a huge problem, and there are factors and
Hmm.
and source and powers are impacting their ability to
Hmm.
help the community more than they can. I get that. But I think a lot of people are also involved in
Hmm.
fraud. A lot of people are out to use government money and
Hmm.
funds for themselves. I mean, there have been countless situations in a lot of these metropolitan
Hmm.
cities where a lot of people who look like us, who are Black, have been fired or even arrested and put in jail for using government funds and using their power to uh, pretty much live a high life and do things just for themselves.
Hmm.
So I agree that it is up to us as a community to come together to uh, build some
Hmm.
empowerment and financial freedom for ourselves. But then we also have to look at ourselves and think to ourselves, okay, do we want that, or are we just in it for ourselves?
Right. Yeah, and I think I'm glad you brought that up about the politicians because it goes back to this concept of, politics is the little brother, but finances and business is the big brother. The big brother, business and finances, is what drives politics. So if you look at like with the president, for example, the president is empowered because of all the millions and millions of dollars that's raised by his corporate, donors. So those are the ones who really have the power because at the end of the day, if those people want him to change his agenda or want him to do something differently, he's going to do it because otherwise they're not going to give him the financial backing he needs to get reelected. And so what I'm saying is I think black people in this country, going back to the civil rights movement, I think we've been a little bit backwards in that we focus more on trying to gain political rights and political freedom and not enough on the actual empowerment of, your financial power and the power of ownership and businesses. Because I think ultimately that's what controls politics. Because you're right, we have a lot of these major cities that are going, that have the issues, in the inner cities, are run by black politicians or run by Democrats. But you got to think about who's behind those black politicians, who's putting those black politicians in place. Typically, it's white people. It could be white liberals or the white Democrat Party, and they may have their own agenda for how they want things to be run. And so the black politician may want to change the world in the black community. They may want to make all kinds of changes, but ultimately they're going to be limited to what they're allowed to do by the people who are financing them. So like Raphael Warnock, for example, I know he's the senator in Georgia, so he's not like directly related to the black community, as far as some of the issues that are going on. But billions of dollars were raised to put him in office, but they were raised almost all primarily by white people. So when he gets in office, he's going to be answering primarily to the people who paid the money to get him in office, more so than the black people who voted him in. And so I think at the end of the day, where it's going to go back to is if we have our own businesses, we have our own finances, then those black politicians will have to answer to those black business owners in their community. You see what I'm saying? And so if those black business owners and the black leaders in the community want things to be done in a certain way to resolve the problem, then they'll put pressure on those politicians to say, hey, if you guys don't put laws in place or enforce laws in order to help straighten this out, then you're not going to be in office. That's how things get done, rather than relying on the politicians to fix those problems.
And I think you can see that through the work that Ice Cube has been doing, where he tried to meet with whoever would be able to meet with him prior to the election of 2020. And he got a lot of flack from the black community for trying to meet with the Biden administration and the Trump administration to see what they can do to put in place the plans that he made with people with scholars and experts who really have been working all their lives to try to build financial empowerment among black people. And so, but we didn't see that. We were so focused on the fact that he met with Donald Trump that we failed to realize that it's bigger than that, guys. No party is for just the black people. Okay? So we have to do what's best for us, because other cultures are doing that. Other cultures are figuring out, okay, what can I get from whoever is in office to help my community and my people and my family? Are we doing that? Do we want to do that?
And that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned Ice Cube, because I know one of the people he's worked closely with is Dr. Claude Anderson, and he's the author of the book Powernomics. And one of the things he preaches about is the importance of black people owning their own businesses and owning their own systems, because at the end of the day, if you want the politicians to do anything, you have to have leverage in order to be able to get them to do it. So but basically Ice Cube was saying is that, look, I don't like Donald Trump, I understand that, but if he's even willing to listen, if I can at least get him at the table, that should put pressure on the Democrats to respond to our demands and respond to our needs. Because right now you have a situation where the Republicans generally don't care about black issues because they know black people aren't going to vote for them anyway. So they're not really worried about that. And then the Democrats, they'll pretend to care about black issues. They're doing it in a very superficial way, but they don't really care that much because they know black people are going to vote for them. So at some point, you have to do something where you put pressure on the Democrats and say, hey, you know what, if you don't meet some of our demands here that we're looking for, there is a threat that we're going to vote for the other side. And then also the other side know that, hey, you know what, we don't agree with you on everything, but if you're willing to work with us on certain issues, you can still get our vote. And that's where you create leverage. That's how you create a negotiation, to where the Democrats, people aren't going to do anything unless they absolutely have to. No measure or no advancement for black people in this country has been made unless the other party was forced, or the other side was forced to do it. And that's the only way you have any kind of advancement. And so it's the same thing when it comes to power, when it comes to politics, is that Joe Biden, Democrats, they can be as well-meaning as they want, but they're not going to take any risky political position unless they feel like they have to. And so right now they know they're going to have 80 to 90% of the black vote locked up no matter what they do. So why should they put their necks out for people who are already going to vote for them anyway? So I think that's what you got to think about before we're so quick to, sort of attack our own for sort of thinking outside the box. But I'm glad you brought that up. All right, so I think the next one I think we'll probably be able to go through pretty quickly because it's very related to the gang violence topic, but it's police brutality. And I know that's sort of the trendy hot button issue over the past year is black police brutality in the black community. We have to stop the violence the police put on black people in the inner cities, and that is an issue. I think we do have a lot of cases where there's excessive force from white police officers against black men and black people in general. But I think if you look at the numbers, it's not nearly as large of a discrepancy between black and white people as far as police deaths at the hands of police officers as the media sort of makes you believe. And even though there is a discrepancy, even if it was even larger than what it is, I think we're so focused on sort of the tip of the iceberg that we're missing what the underlying factors are. This is not by any means, I don't feel, the biggest issue in the black community. The issue is not so much that you have a white police officer coming in and being excessively violent against black people. The issue is, well, why do we have these white officers come into the black communities in the first place? Because in most cases, honestly, it's black people who have called the white police officer to come in to resolve the issue. So I think we got to get to the underlying problem, which I think is that first, we don't have enough black wealth and black businesses in the community to where we can put that kind of pressure on the police officers who are coming in to police the area, or to make sure that there are more black officers and black chiefs who are running those police those stations. And so I think, and then also if you have a community where we're policing ourselves to where we're making an effort to get the gang violence out, we're not we're trying to clean up our own communities. We're not going to be as reliant on police, on the government, or on the on the police officers to do it for us. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think taking a couple of steps back, I don't think it's like we're creating a black state, or a black like nation or anything like that. We have to realize that we live in a country of other people. We live in a country with whites and Asians and Indians and Hispanics and
all of which have their own communities that they stick together with.
Absolutely. But then the police of those communities are comprised of a whole bunch of different groups. And if you really think about it, where most black people live in metropolitan cities, they are being run by black police chiefs and black sergeants and whatnot. Sure. Not all, but a lot. So I think if we look at what we have and who's running what we are dealing with now, a lot of black people are in these leadership positions for the police. I believe that we have to look at it in, like I said, in a kind of a macro sense. And I'm repeating again this whole interrelated, intersecting notion that it is a lot bigger than just the problem of the police coming in and shooting our children, which is a huge issue. The issue is also the fact that crimes are being done that require the police to come in.
That's true.
Come on, guys.
That's very true.
Okay, when you're in a metropolitan city, I think that the likelihood of that occurring is higher. But what are we teaching ourselves and our kids about living life? Right. There's a lot of poverty that's going on that's impacting one's ability to even see that I can live life without crime. Right. Okay? A lot of people don't even see or believe that I can achieve greatness without doing some type of malice or some type of crime, illegal crime. Right. And so we have to figure out the system, figure out the game, because we're losing and we're focusing on a problem. It's a problem. Right. We're focusing on that problem solely, thinking that, okay, if we just fix that, everything's going to be great for our community. And that's not even, nothing will happen pretty much.
Right. I kind of equate it to, if the police come in and they, arrest the man gently, but he's still going to jail. I mean, they're doing it gently and they're being very polite, but he's still going to be in jail and be locked up for years to come. So I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like we get more upset about how the police are responding to these incidents more so than why the incidents are occurring in the first place. And I think if we can change that mindset of, how about we cut out the crime so we don't need the police to come in the first, as opposed to be like, okay, well, we've done all this stuff has been going on, but y'all need to be a little more gentle with how you're handling this. I think then we're going to actually get real problems solved.
I think it all goes back to this the desire, I believe, that a lot of the black culture has of wanting to be accepted, wanting to be liked. If y'all just like us, if y'all just appreciate us, then things would be great for us. And if we kind of let that go, if we let go wanting to be appreciated and really focus on how we can beat the system without crime, then I think that would help our culture a lot.
Yeah.
Now, let's not forget that a lot of people have done that, and the powers that be have gone in to take that away.
Yeah, but you don't stop because the opposition tries to, fight back against you. You know that's going to come. So you have to keep fighting against that and keep moving forward. Right. You know, no matter what progress you make, there's going to be a pushback against that. It's like if you're playing a football game, you don't go on the field and expect that the other team just going to let you run up and down the field. No, they're going to try to stop you. So if you make a play, they're going to try to figure out a way to stop that play. But then you have to find a way to counteract that. That's called competition.
So do you, as that football team, since the opposition's trying to stop you, do you just start kind of beating them up and tearing apart the field and just being really angry like we did when we were rioting after the George Floyd murder and tearing up our own businesses? Or do we find a way, which many people have done, to beat the system and make societal change that lasts?
Right. No, that's a great point. And
no, did it pause?
Yeah. Okay.
But I was still going.
Yeah, but I think so what you just mentioned, those were some great points, and we can have a whole separate podcast about that. But yeah, that's good. So I guess so. The next thing is we kind of touched on it, but just broken homes, and I think one of the big things, I think now it's starting to become a little more of a mainstream issue, but it's just broken homes in the Black community, where we have a lot of single single mother for the most part households that are raising these kids, and you don't have that strong family structure to teach kids and to guide kids, as they're coming up. And I think that leads to a lot of these other problems where you have, kids joining gangs or doing poorly in school, and you have a lot of poverty in the community. So, and I think, we kind of touched on it before, but it's like if there's more, financial independence in the community, there's more Black-owned businesses, and there's more prosperity in the community, then I think it's going to be easier for Black men and Black women to form healthy relationships. Because I think right now there's a power dynamic that's going on where Black women have more wealth than Black men. They have more education. And I think in a lot of ways it kind of leads them to sort of not respect Black men, in a way that they can respect their husband, and I think that in of itself kind of leads to more of a, dysfunctional relationship in the community. What do you think?
I totally agree. And I think that a cycle is being created where Black men are created in being raised to kind of fall in line with how Black men are perceived by society and by Black women and Black and women in general. And Black women are raised to kind of fill that role of being the independent person that does not need anyone, that can be the mother and the father and the grandmother and the grandfather and the baker and the gardener. That is not true, because we survive in a village, and honestly, I dare a lot of single mothers out there, Black single mothers who have to raise their kid on their own and raise a lot of young Black men on their own. And I'm sure that they will be the first to say that it's very difficult. Right. There are some that are very successful in doing so, and there's some that are not. And
most are not. I mean, let's be honest about it.
And the ones that are not have to think back on their lives as to what could have been done to prevent the situation from occurring. I think that, not necessarily to blame anyone for mistakes that have happened in one's life, but we as women have to think about how we contribute to our life problems, and then also think about how we can change that cycle for our children,
that's a great point.
Boys and girls. Yeah. So if you're having a child at 13 and you have a lot of issues, or you have 5 kids by the age of 21, and you're surviving on the government, and you can't hold a job because you have to do childcare, or you're in school, you're in college, and you're using the funds from your loans to pay for living, and you're not even taking college and the schools classes that you're taking seriously. You have to think about, how is this helping myself and my family and my children succeed? Exactly. And is there another way? Right. And I think that it's up to those of us who have been blessed to know a little bit more about how to take care of ourselves and our family and our children, to educate those who don't in a compassionate way,
they have to be willing to accept the education too,
in a compassionate manner, because I feel you that men and women have to be able to accept and hear the things that they don't want to hear about themselves, and be willing to change those things. But those of us, like I said, who know, who have the information, need to share that information in a compassionate manner, not just so that we can feel good about ourselves, but so that we can help them and help them see that there's another way. Right. And even if you're in a position where you've made some life decisions that were not helpful and that you're in a rut, there's a way for you to get out of that and teach your children that they can do more. That's true. Okay, or maybe you can't do more in this moment, but they can do more throughout their whole entire life.
That's true. Yeah, no, you were on fire. Those are great points. And I think the irony is that I think a lot of times black women today are kind of saying, well, there aren't enough good black men or black men that are worth marrying. And the irony is, I think a lot of times these women are creating those black men. When you have these single parent households, it's like if you want to have a marriageable black man and a strong black man, then you need to create an environment that can create that black man. And part of that is by having a father in the household. So I think you're right. I mean, it's a cycle. I think you have a situation where, you have single parent households that are raising boys in a way that they're not being raised to be strong black men that can create families of their own. And then when that happens, these women, as they grow up, they don't really have a whole lot of guys to choose from, or they don't feel like they do. And then you continue to perpetuate that cycle.
And let's not act as if like the black man in general is like this like sad species that are left to go reary. Black men too have an obligation to learn how to take care of themselves and to realize, because many of them haven't been taught and they don't know, and they have not yet realized that in order to create a better community, they have to do something with themselves. I think black men have to realize that. But that's why I go back to my question. Do we want to? Right. Do we want to realize that? Can we even see past the reality TV shows and the media and the TikTok and the social whatever? Can we see past all of that to how we can help ourselves thrive in a moral and better way?
Yeah, now I do have to push back a little bit, because what you're saying, and I agree with it, is that black men also have to take responsibility and ownership for their condition. And I agree with that. We do have to, but I'm gonna go back. I'm actually gonna kind of drop a Terminator reference from the movie Terminator. So if you go back to that movie, one of the things that the machines wanted to do, and I know you may not care, you're not a big Terminator fan, but a lot of people out there are, and they understand what I'm about to say. The mission of the Terminators, they wanted to go back in time to kill John Connor while he was a little boy. And then, and so the idea was that we don't want him to learn how to become a strong man and a strong leader to be able to lead the resistance and take us down. And so I think kind of what's happening is that before these black men could even get into a position to where, they can learn how to, improve their lives and turn around and become strong men, their lives get so kind of messed up and screwed up at a young age before they even know what they're doing, that by the time they get to that age, their lives have already kind of been destroyed. So it's like you have a lot of like teenage boys who end up, getting caught up in the system when they're 15, 16, 17 years old. And then by the time they get older in their 30s or whatever, and they start to want to make changes, now they are so far behind that they can't really catch up. So that's why I'm saying that, if we're going to say that, hey, these black women are strong and they're the single parents, we're going to pat them on the back for kind of leading the community, they also have to be criticized for not doing a good enough job of raising these black boys, and something's got to change, because you can't really just say, oh, now that your life has been completely messed up and you don't really have any guidance or leadership in your life, black man, now you got to fix it. Well, who's helping them to fix it? Who's giving them that direction? And so I think it starts with these young boys and making sure that we give them good guidance and good male leadership. And then honestly, if we're going to empower the black women by making sure that they're the ones who get the education, they have the responsibility of making sure they raise their black sons better. So.
I agree. And like I said, I think it's up to those of us. And I think there are a lot of community programs and there are black men out there who are trying to help those who were not given that opportunity to have a strong male father figure in the home. And then that there are those Black men out there who have been through the system, who have not had the opportunities themselves, but then they have gone to jail or something else has happened in their life, and they've learned from their life experiences and they've done something with themselves to create change.
Right.
And they are now reaching back to the community and helping those as well. I think there are few and far between of those men out there, but there are men out there who have been through, and sometimes it takes those. Sometimes it takes the ones who have been through, who have gone to prison, who have been in the system, who have led really hard lives growing up, but who have made it out to come back and help those who have not yet been in those situations and to prevent that from happening.
Right,
but I think it also takes those who never had any issues, Black men who have never had any problems in their lives, you know, who have had good, strong influences, to also teach those children, many children out there who have no father figures, and no positive male figures, and not even positive Black female figures in their lives, to see that they can too make something out of their lives in a moral, positive way, and they can build financial empowerment.
Right. No. That's some points. Yeah. So I think we're gonna try to see if we can go through these last 2 points. So one of the things I want to touch on though is this whole idea of the corporate glass ceiling. I mean, we hear a lot about people saying, well, Black people, you know, we don't make up nearly a high enough percentage of the ranks in the executive leadership at these large corporations, and that is a problem. I mean, you know, we're very much underrepresented in those areas. But I think you got to think about why that's occurring. And I think the reason is that who owns those buildings, who owns those businesses, is primarily white people. And the thing is that what incentive do they have to promote Black people beyond a certain point and to bring more Black people into the executive ranks? Because from their perspective, if you're a high performing Black person who's in middle management, they can say, well, you know what? Yeah, we really like you, but if I don't promote you to an executive level, where are you going to go? Like what how are you going, like I was saying before earlier, like where is you got to put pressure on people in order to and create leverage in order to get those results. And so if I'm a white business owner, I'm like, okay, well, you can try to go to another white business to try to get that position, but they're probably not going to hire you anyway either, just like me. So if I don't have that incentive to promote you to executive level, and also me being white, I may want to look after my own people also. I may only want to, you know, promote people I'm comfortable with who look like me or act like me. Then there's no incentive for me to, you know, to promote you beyond a certain level because you don't have any leverage. What do you think?
And you just have to look at the state of jobs in our country. It's a very nepotistic society in all fields. Most of the people who are in their positions have gotten those positions because they know somebody.
Oh yeah, right.
You know,
not
so
who you know.
It's who you know, and it's and a lot of folks think that it's who you know based off of your skills, my ability to network, my ability to jive with the people, and yes, it's a minute part of it, but it's also who you know that's your mentor, or who you know that is your parent, or who you know that is your friend's friend of a parent. You know, it really is very sad to see that a lot of people, especially people of color and especially Black people, don't get opportunities to succeed and get these higher positions because they are not in the system. I think that's changing, and I think honestly, maybe possibly bringing a lot more affirmative action and opportunities could be helpful for our community. Well, I think that's how a lot of Black people got to these high position roles in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I think there's definitely a need for affirmative action when it was put in place, and I think we need to continue to keep it up because of the, you know, basically because of the discrepancies and the racism we've had in this country to hold Black people down. You do need to put policies in place in order to try to reverse some of that. So I'm on board with it, but I'm thinking even deeper than that, which is that, you know, rather than us having to rely on, you know, policies like affirmative action and government intervention to force businesses to, you know, promote a couple of Black people up the ranks, I think you can even do it also through more of a economic, route, where if you have more Black businesses, okay, so now if you have this, you know, this this talented young black professional who's been with the company for 4, 5, 6 years and who's doing very well. Well, now if they know they can go to a black business and get promoted and go to and come in at a higher level, then if these white corporations want to retain their black talent, then they're going to be pressured to promote them, because if they don't promote them, if they don't move them up, then that black talent is going to leave the corporation and go help another black business become a competitor to those white corporations. And I think that's really the key. It's all about competition. So if black people have their own businesses and they can compete with white companies and white businesses, that's going to force white businesses to have to react and say, you know what, we got to do something to stem the tide of all this lost talent, which that means they're gonna have to promote black people up the ranks. They're gonna have to pay black people more, because if they don't, those same black employees are gonna become rivals to them by going to another company, another black-owned company, and competing with them. So I think naturally that's how you create those opportunities for black people to move up in business. If they even want to stay at those white corporations, they may now want to go off to the black businesses or create their own.
Okay, and so I think that a lot of what we've talked about so far has been very macro, has been very like what the black community needs to do. Are there any like steps or tools that an individual, should they listen to this, what they can do right now in this moment to help instill financial empowerment for themselves and for their community?
Yeah, I think where it really starts is with the youth. Honestly, I think how we're raising our kids. I think the first thing is, you got to get back to having family values. I think we got to get back to valuing having fathers in the household to raise their kids. And I think also we got to go back to valuing discipline and education in the household, to where when our kids go to school, getting a C or a D or just not getting suspended is not good enough. We got to raise our standards. So we're gonna challenge our kids to do better. We're not gonna just accept the fact that, oh well, these teachers are racist and that's why you're not. No, I mean, there's some things you can do to make sure you're doing better, and make sure our kids are doing better. So I think that's where it's going to start. But I think the other part is, when we're raising our kids, we should not just raise them to want to go to college and to get a job that basically going to be working for a white person or a white corporation. I also want to teach them how to start their own businesses, start their own corporations. And I think I alluded to it earlier about Dr. Claude Anderson's book Powernomics. That's the thing he talks about, is that we need to build more black institutions so that we can be more self-sufficient. And I think by teaching your kids at a young age how to go about starting their own businesses, you're going to give them more leverage to where they're not going to be so dependent on whether or not corporations or white businesses like them, or if they're going to be willing to hire them. If they come out of college and they're having a hard time getting a job at a white corporation, that's fine. They can go on and start their own business, or they might decide to start their own business in lieu of going to work for a corporation. And also, if they know how to have their own investments and purchase assets and have kind of develop wealth, well, then if you hand that wealth down from generation to generation, then you won't be as reliant or have the need to have to work for another company, because you already are financially independent. So as far as just a practical thing you can do, I think the first thing is just, making sure you're raising your kids to value education, but then also teaching yourself about financial literacy and educating yourself. I think that's the best steps you can take.
All right. Well, I think that was a really good conversation.
I did have one other quick thing I want to talk about. Okay. It's honestly, it's kind of like, I guess, sort of echoing what we were discussing with black entrepreneurship and the glass ceiling. It's talking about just in sports, like so in college and NFL football. So I know one of the things that's kind of been a hot topic lately is how there's a lack of black coaches in the NFL and in college football. And to me, I think it's kind of sad that we're in that position where basically, you have football. Let's be honest. I mean, black people are generally inherently the best when it comes to playing football. Let's be honest about that. That's the reason why you have 70-80% of the players in the NFL are black. And yet we still are, that all those players are still acting as if they're just regular people on the street who don't have any power. So like, if you feel like there aren't enough black coaches out there, you need to, say something about that, because the only reason we have, these white owners in the NFL have black players is because they know that they're the best players. It's a meritocracy, and they know that the only way they can win games is by having the black players. I guarantee you, if white players were just as good as black players, you have 90% of the league would be white. So what you got to understand is that there's a lot of inherent value that black people have when it comes to football that we're not taking advantage of. There's a lot of power that we have they're not taking advantage of. And one of the things that I do like, and I'm starting to see, is that, like, Deion Sanders, for example, he's the head coach of Jackson State, an HBCU, all black, university, where at some point we've got to start saying as black people, do we want to continue to give our talent and our skills and our money and our wealth to white institutions that don't care about us?
Absolutely.
And so if you're a top level black athlete, why wouldn't you want to consider going to and HBCUs have their issues, I understand that, but at the very least you're going to a school that is trying to educate black people. And so if you can take your black talent and take it to those HBCUs, guess what will happen? Now all of a sudden you can hire black head coaches to go to those schools and go win national championships because your best talent is at the schools.
Honestly, I think at the end of the day, for the individual and for the school and for everyone, it's about money.
Well, no, this is what I'm talking about. It goes back to the money.
It goes back to the money. So if a student is being wooed by Alabama or in another SEC school to go play for them, and they're being offered all these kind of quote unquote monetary, but they don't violate NCAA like rules, but they're offered all these like kind of jewels before they commit to the school, and the HBCU, who's struggling to keep the doors open, period, don't have any money. What makes you think that that student, that child who's already struggling and living a hard life, who by some grace has found their skills and has been sought after by folks, and who has been told by these SEC white schools that they or others NCAA schools that they can go to the NFL and they can make a lot of money if you go to our program. What makes you think they're going to be like, well, no, because I care about the state of the black community, that I'm going to go to this poorly run / small school that is focused on black people? What makes you think that they're going to be like, yeah, let me take that option?
Because the fathers in the household have been listening to this podcast and they've educated themselves on the history of black America to where they don't want to send their kid to another racist white school. They know from their own experiences and from what they know about the history of this country, they're going to say, you know what, I don't want my kid to be going to a school that, they're going to be surrounded by 90% white people there, and they think so little of us that they don't even want to hire a black coach on an almost all black football team. But I think in addition to that, it's that at the end of the day, the Alabamas aren't the kids are the ones who create Alabama. Let's be honest with you. I mean, I think that's one of the problems we have in black communities. We don't understand or realize our own power. These black players are the ones who make Alabama Alabama. The only reason Alabama is as great as they are is because they get the best black athletes every year. So those same black athletes went to either Jackson State or they went to Grambling. All of a sudden, Grambling and Jackson State would be the best teams in college football, and all of a sudden, those would be the schools getting the BCS, not the BCS, but going to the college football playoff. It wouldn't be Alabama.
And that's how it was back in the day, back before blacks were even allowed to play in the SECs and the Big Ten schools because of segregation. In the Negro
Negro leagues in baseball.
In the Negro leagues and in the HBCUs at like Grambling State, the students were great. And it wasn't until integration happened and that these, I guess, companies, the NFL, whoever, saw these black players and how good they were, that they started.
They had to.
They had to
didn't
start
want to.
taking.
Still don't want to, but they have to.
They had to start taking these black players into their programs so that they can get more money from their boosters, so that they can get some more money from their alumni, so they can get more money from the students. And so we have to think about how we, as black people over history, have funded the university system in our country. Because if you really think about it, the schools that have the best football teams are often the schools that have the most money for research, that have the most money for a lot of things. And do not
hire black professors at those schools.
Right. So we have to think about how we can use our power for ourselves more for than others. How are we taking the money that we get from our jobs and are we putting it back into someone else's hands, or are we using that dollar to help our children and help ourselves for our futures? Think about it. What are you buying in your life? What are you purchasing? I think we have to ask ourselves that too. What are we purchasing every day? And are the things that we purchase, are they helping us fuel our lives for our family and for ourselves, or are they putting money back into someone else's hands for their families and for their futures? And it's not just about white people.
Mhm.
It's about other cultures. Think about the Asian community. How much money are you putting into the Asian community's hands? How much money are you putting into the Indian community's hands?
Mm.
How much money are you putting into
Yeah,
the white community's hands to benefit their families? And it's not a bad thing. We want to support all of our people. But how much are we supporting ourselves,
Exactly,
friends?
right.
You know, how much money are we putting into our own
That's
hands?
True. That's true. And I'll just wrap it up with this. I guarantee you, if there if there was a black coach who was able to get the black players that Nick Saban has, Alabama would all of a sudden fire Nick Saban and hire that black coach. I mean, that's how this thing works. My point is that if you have black players going to HBCUs, you have black coaches who are able to recruit black players, then all of a sudden those white schools will be forced, if they want to compete, to hire black coaches. That's going to be the only way they're going to get those black players. Not just black coaches, but they have to have black administrators, and have to have more black professors. That's how the powernomics game works, is that people will only make changes or do things when they are forced to, or when they have to. So if you want to see more black coaches, want to see more black ADs, the only way to do that is that the black players put pressure on those schools to do that. And honestly, if you get to that point where you've got HBCUs having the best players, those probably don't even want to go to Alabama. Alabama kind of plays twice as much to get that black coach to come to this racist white school than them staying at their own school and helping their own people out. So that's how you work. You can fix a lot of problems on your own by understanding money. So. All right. Well, yeah, I think this was a great discussion. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're not anti-white, anti any other race. We're just pro-black. We want to make sure we're taking care of our own people because no one else is going to take care of us. And so I think if we can get that mindset, I think we'll see a lot more progress in the black community. So.
All right.
All right. Well, this has been The Grain. And as always, stay against the grain. Thank you.